Hello everybody, as I'm so cutie. This is my third time trying to record this because of my cat, so I'm a little fed up talking about Sapphire Steel. I do believe that Sapphire Steel is going to be one of the best decks in the format. Probably closer to fourth in terms of like overall playability and performance. But it has been the most popular overall in the early access of Lorcanito. I do believe that it'll still continue to be even better. I think people are still just trying to figure out their lists. Even myself, I'm trying to figure out my list. I believe that even from the two lists that I'm posting here, I do think it's changed. This has been the deck I've played the most. I've played into Blurple, I've played into Mirrors, I've played into Amber Steel, I've played into Green Blue. Not a lot of Dogs. I've only played Dogs once. There's a lot of Ruby Steel at the moment and things like that, but again, Sapphire Steel is one of those control decks that kind of just gets there every single time. Quest for too much is too tanky. Let's get right into it. So this is my expected meta. There's not a lot of tournaments to go off of anymore, but I do believe popularity rankings will probably stay the same. So Blurple, Purple Steel, Amber Steel. I do believe that those two at the top are the best performing decks and are officially what everybody has adapted to. Adapted to play against. Amber Steel, though, is always a comfort color since the start of the game. Amber Steel is going to continue to be a good aggro deck, and some people are even leaning to it being a control deck. I don't necessarily know how I feel about it being in a control deck straight up. It lacks just a little bit of draw, which I talked about when I talked about the 23 new cards in the Whispers of the Well. But I do believe Blue Steel will shoot up over Green Blue. The thing is, Green Blue isn't actually that liked. It's not like to play against, it's not like to play. It is very grindy, it takes a long time to win. So I do believe that Blue Steel will go over popularity rankings, especially now that it is a little bit more playable and that more people are playing it in general. People feel less scared to play it. Dogs will go down, and Ruby Amethyst is probably one of the lowest decks being played in competitive Lorcana, even though I do believe that it is very good. The current power rankings with this new set, I do believe go as follow. I believe it is still Blurple, and Blurple has only gotten better to beat Purple Steel on the draw. Purple Steel does continue to be a very good tempo deck and has very different archetypes now. Ruby Amethyst is probably one of the best decks in the format, if not second. Probably tied with Purple Steel overall. The thing is, people don't play it. People continue not to play it, and my teammates continue to play it and continue to win. So I'm pretty happy with that. Blue Steel, I do believe, has hit a huge power spike, and it is kind of destroying everything. Overall, Amber Steel is probably one of the weakest decks in the format just because of the archetypes that exist at the moment. I do believe it gets beaten out pretty quick. The thing is, if you get Spooky Sight dropped on you, and sure, you have like Rhino and things, Blue is also running single removal, so if you're only really relying on Rhino, you probably losing to Spooky Sight. Overall, though, there's still things like Under the Sea and like Captain Hook and Calhoun and Zeus now for your Tianas, so I do believe Amber Steel has dropped exponentially. But this is the Blue Steel list. I am cutting off, let me see if I can just move that very quick. I am cutting off the Namiri, the Beyond the Horizon, and that's about what I was cutting off. But this is the list that I've been playing. So the thing is that I saw an interaction where you basically play Gargoyle. You draw for Gargoyle first, then you trigger Cinderella because of a princess being played that turn, right? You drop one of the cards that you drew into to draw another one. But since you drop the second ink of the turn, Chicha gets to trigger, and depending on how many Chichas is triggered, you get to draw 1, 2, or 3, right? And then Goliath is already dismissed, so you end turn with like 4 or 5 cards, another 2 cards in the inkwell, and then Goliath on the board. Overall, Goliath has been pretty much overperforming in the deck. Cinderella has also been overperforming in the deck. The thing is, you're skipping to 6 so often that playing things like Tink, Vincenzo, and Hades are just very common. And you also get to Spooky Sight almost immediately, so a very emergency board wipe kind of thing. It is only at 2, because I do play Hook. The problem with Blue Steel this last set was that you weren't able to both be on the board and then also combat the hand and combat the top end. But the thing is, Goliath does that all by himself. Spooky Sight and Goliath are 8 cards that you just need, and it basically answers those 2 issues drastically. And now you can play Chicha Cinderella and draw a million cards. So the deck has been super good. The deck has varied from this by a couple counts. But overall, all the card choices are about the same. But yeah, let's get right into why why this deck, right? Why is blue steel just good this set? The thing is, again, Chicha is drawing so many cards, but the thing is with purple being so good, you either have to play purple, you have to play Clarabelle, or you have to play steel, which dismisses purple entirely. I do believe that steel is very hard for purple to deal with due to very low stat lines and steel's very high stat lines. Like things like Vincenzo can only be really removed by Hades. So now if you're presenting Vincenzo, Namiri, Goliath, Hades, it just becomes a very difficult board for them to deal with. And if they're going to overdraw into like Big Elsa, Exertions, and ITUs, Purple Steel having like Rose and Cobra, the thing is now you're dismissing their hand, right? You're saying you don't get to do that. You get to lose your hand, right? Obviously, there's a little counterplay to this with decks kind of just balancing 2 cards in hand. But again, Goliath is an inkable card, which is super good. But Goliath has been one of the best cards in Blue Steel so far. And yeah, I that's my reasoning on why Blue Steel is getting even better this set. There's also just a bunch of synergies. I did also have Kita on this slide, but Kita's just a little bit slower. The thing is, when you're on the play, you basically get to play Chicha for free every single time. If they're taking time to answer it, then you can just ramp to 5. Or even just take the turn to ramp to 5, still play your 4, take the draw, play slower, right? Because if they're being slow enough to answer Chicha, then they're probably slow enough to get beaten out by Vincenzo, Hades, or Spooky. The thing is, the deck just runs really well, because when you're on the play and then you go Chicha, you sail, get a Chicha draw, Cinderella draw, Chicha draw, then you have 2 Chichas, then you have 3 Chichas, and then the game's basically over at that point. The thing is, you're drawing just too much off of Chicha, and Chicha does genuinely break the deck. The thing is, if you don't find Chicha, you're still also just blue steel, and you still present a lot of ways to balance the hand out very, very well. Chicha is kind of just that cherry on top that makes the deck so good in the competitive scene. But yeah, there's just a lot of synergies in blue steel as well. So again, going straight into the good cards that I have tested for a little bit, Chicha is just phenomenal. The thing is, once you establish the second Chicha, the game is basically over. You're just drawing too much. You're drawing too many cards, and you can't deal with 4 Vincenzos. Like, you really cannot. No deck in the format can deal with 4 Vincenzos, unless you're getting, like, exerted and slapped for 8, or you're getting, like, Disputed cycled or Dragonfire cycled. Maybe Shark is a little bit scarier, but again, you have Hades, Goliath, Zeus, and Strength. You can produce wider boards with cheaper drops, with tankier drops, with mid-range drops, and you are sniping things for a bunch. Chicha just lets you find so many cards in a deck that used to not be able to find so many cards, and that's simply because of Cinderella's proc at the end of the turn. 2 Chichas, again, you're drawing 3 cards at the end of your turn every single time. And Goliath, you get to draw 2, then draw the 3. There's just a lot of interactions where Chicha just shines, right? Jasmine is also a card that, for her Princess tagline, number 1, she comes out on curve after Cinderella, which is just very relevant. And Jasmine herself is just a card that can hit so many evasive targets. It is a very good card. It is very hard to deal with. I've had Purple Steel drop it on me last set. I've had Green Steel drop it on me last set. Any steel control deck trying to control Blurple will drop this, and it is actually pretty hard to deal with for a little bit. And then on top of this, you're presenting Vincenzo Hades. Again, Vincenzo Hades is probably one of the best 8 cards that you can run, and now if you can run it healthily, it just becomes very difficult. Blue Steel will probably begin to overtake Purple Steel, but the thing is, Purple Steel just has a better power level into other blue decks that aren't steel. That's why Purple Steel is still technically a lot better. In terms of like random variation in Swiss and aggro and things like that, because you are still relying on Spooky, but again, you do have Hook and things like that. But again, Jasmine is just for the trait of Princess, for the trait of Evasive, for the trait of Questing for 2 and 3/7. The card is just very good. Again, this one is pretty self-explanatory. Vincenzo Hades is just some of the strongest stuff ever. The fact Vincenzo is inkable, 8 willpower, and can quest for 3 is probably one of the most broken, overtuned things in the game. The thing is, not a lot of people play it, and you never have the hand size to make it that threatening. Typically, when you play a pretty high-rolling blue steel, they're only balancing about 2 to 3 cards in hand, so seeing the 1 Vincenzo isn't that scary, because you know there's not a lot to follow, right? But now you have a million cards in hand and you drop a Vincenzo, then there's probably another Vincenzo or a Hades, and you're probably losing. Lackluster has been Spooky Sight. The thing is, there's not a lot of aggro at the moment that's being tested. The only aggro, again, that I've seen straight up is Amber Steel. But the thing is, it just came down to like a control deck. A lot of the Amber Steel at the moment is control. And so Spooky Sight has just been a little bit more lackluster. But I do think it's going to be necessary because I do believe that people will still play aggro, will still play Tiana aggro, will still play dog aggro, and try to just get lucky on like Mowgli triggers, right? It has been lackluster, but again, semi-lackluster. It is still a pretty necessary card. You don't want to lose to aggro, and that is really your only bad matchup if you are a very good pilot. Namiri has been a little lackluster just because of when she comes out on curve. If you don't establish Chicha, then you are balancing 2 to 3 cards in hand. The thing is, with like Cinderella and Namiri helps you find more Chichas. So in the turns where you have Cinderella into Namiri and you don't have a lot of cards in hand, you probably have like 2 or 3. You're just looking for more Chichas because post turn 6, you're dropping the 2 Chichas, taking the ink, and then dropping the Cindy ink on the 4 cards in hand, and then you're drawing 2. You're drawing 3. So it just is really good in terms of finding things that draw you cards. Also, finding Goliath for curve is also pretty important because once you find Goliath, you find Chicha. Things like Visions of the Future and Develop could definitely be in the deck, but again, I opted for things like Mulan, just because it is a princess and it keeps triggering Cinderella. But Mulan could be Develop Your Brain. I do think Develop Your Brain could be a little bit better now that I'm thinking about it and talking about it. These videos also help me. But again, most things in the deck are pretty good in the scenarios that they have to appear in. And some of them are just a little bit win more, like Aurora, so they could be swapped out for like things like Visions or something that just net 0, like Robin Hood or whatever. But again, just kind of the thought process behind some of the better cards or lackluster cards, especially during testing in the first week. Tinkerbell has also been just a little bit lackluster. The thing is that people right now are playing like Shark stuff, like Ruby Amber Shark, Ruby Amethyst Shark, Ruby Sapphire Shark, or they're also playing higher end decks like Blue Steel. And so Tinkerbell is just a little bit more lackluster. It does present a really like tradable body though, because like you can still hit Vincenzo and then like splash damage to like Chichas and whatever. It also does kill Chichas, Happies, the evasive Saberwing in purple. A lot of like really weak stuff it does hit. So like it's still pretty relevant, right? But the thing is, like at 4 it has been just a little lackluster where I'm like, you know, I don't really want tank here. Like I'm probably just gonna ink it, etc. So it has been just a little lackluster in that sense. But I do still think it's necessary. I definitely wouldn't cut it just yet, but on the play, always, it's going to be Chicha, Sail, Cindy, and then any 6-drop. The thing is, this would probably generate some of the best cards in your deck. And it's all about drawing, right? In blue, it's all about having all your blue cards to start the game and then winning. On the draw, it's going to be Captain Hook to respect any aggro. It's going to be Sail into Sydney. You don't want to go for Chicha, because if you get responded on the draw to Chicha, then you're 3 turns behind already, right? Then you go into your princesses and then start cycling and then find Goliath. Pretty self-explanatory, and the deck does run really well. Obviously, just practice with these 2 things, and things will change slowly. You'll change slowly to, you know, adhere to it better and things like that. But it is very good. These 2 lines have been probably the best at performing, especially in blind, because early access Lorcanito is only blind and best of 1, and these have been the best blind on the play and on the draw mulligans. Obviously, it changes just a little bit. You can keep more card draw, you can keep more net zeros, things like that. You don't need to keep Spooky. You can draw into Spooky. But again, things like Develop would be really nice, because then you can keep Develop in this hand, which would be really nice as well. It could also be like Mulan, but like on the play, since you don't really have to respond to a lot of things, you don't usually want to play a 1-drop because you are blue. So it's just for like hand economy and things like that. You don't usually play a 1-drop unless it's something that replaces itself, which would be a Develop Your Brain. Build going further, again, taking out Beyond the Horizon almost fully, and then just going for Goliath. Goliath has been very, very much overperforming. And then Chicha at 3. The thing is, you are on the draw for most of the time, right? In a game like Lorcana where you win or lose. So Chicha could be a little overkill. The thing is, like, you want 4 because you need to find it when you're on the play and things like that. But overall, the list is pretty healthy this way. You could probably just cut Aurora, put Chicha up. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. This has been Blue Steel. Super excited to see where it goes. I do believe that list will be pretty close to this, if not probably a little different in like the Kita Aurora area. But I do believe it'll stay pretty close. I think maybe people will put in Zeus, maybe, but overall the deck is really good the way it is. I could see people taking out Mulan Hook and playing for like that full top end. I don't necessarily enjoy that, but it is what people like. But thank you guys very much. This has been Blue Steel. Hopefully I can produce another video very soon about some more set 10 decks, but I'm very excited to see this one, and I wanted to put that one out right away.